recording this. My name is Empress, aka 2EmpressYou. Welcome back or welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about natural hair and the spiritual power of natural hair. So let me make sure all my settings are good. So give me 1 second. Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this especially since it is Black History Month. Um, and there's also a story that I saw on TikTok that kind of prompted me to talk about this as well. So we are going to get right into it. So let me begin by talking about the story that I saw that kind of sparked me to do a little more research on this. So there was a story on TikTok of a stylist. I don't know where the stylist is based, but it was of a stylist who was doing, I want to assume, like a consultation with someone. And ooh, hold on 1 second, guys. Sorry about that, guys. Um, Sorry about that. Yes. So there was I want to assume the stylist was doing like a consultation or something where she was basically telling the client or the person that she was styling their hair that her hair is so damaged that she will need to get a buzz cut and she needs to do like a big chop because her hair is so damaged. But the delivery in the video, at least, because the stylist posted this herself, it wasn't the client that posted this, the delivery was very harsh and it was, in my opinion, very insensitive and inappropriate. Um, she basically said that the person needs to get a buzz cut and needs to do clippers, and it seemed like the client as well was having some trouble like understanding why she needs to get her hair cut because her hair was very long. I want to say it was maybe like mid back length, and the stylist said that she needs to get it cut down to basically like a pixie cut. Um, and I believe the client as well hadn't had any hair service, like trims or anything, in a very long time as well. But like I said, the stylist was very harsh. Her delivery was very harsh. The way that she was speaking with the client was very insensitive. And it just reminded me and sparked a conversation for me, at least, of why we don't let just anybody play in our hair, because not everybody has good intentions on a physical level, but on a spiritual level, we don't just let anybody play in our hair. So I'm going to be looking down a little bit because I have some notes, um, because I really wanted to get into this. So the title of this live is Natural Hair, Spiritual Power. There is a lot of power in our natural hair, which is why there was an agenda for us to not embrace our natural hair, because They know how powerful our hair is, and they know that they do not have that same power. Now, on a historical level, natural hair, natural hair was not a thing. It was just hair. It was the hair that grew from our scalp. Our ancestors that used to live in Africa years and centuries ago were wearing the hair that grew out of their scalp normally because that was the norm, right? It wasn't a movement, it wasn't a political movement, it wasn't a statement. It wasn't any of that. It was simply just hair. It was the hair that grew out of their scalp that they maintained and took care of. Um, our ancestors wore their hair in braids, cornrows, all types of styles, um, a lot of traditional styles. They did threading, um, put beads in their hair, adorn their hair with beads for and different intricate styles for special occasions and all of that stuff because our hair was also, part of beauty, something that we use to adorn ourselves. And we even see that with like if you see I can't remember the word right now, but like Egyptians, ancient Egyptians, you see that they had like braids that had bangs and it was in a bob. That was a way that they adorned themselves. If you're watching, please hit the like button. Um, they also wore head wraps. Yes, they wore the hair in head wraps, braids, cornrows, threading, all of that stuff. Um, and like I mentioned, for special occasions, it was done in the more intricate way to enhance their beauty and all of that stuff. So that was historically our ancestors always embraced their natural hair, um, wearing in twists, braids, cornrows, all that stuff. Wigs and stuff weren't really popular with us people of color, aka Black people, aka descendants of ancestors from Africa, because we embraced the hair that grew out of our scalp. Now, I did mention head wraps. I did mention head wraps, and I want to speak about that just briefly. Um, Head wraps and things like that, again, are an ancient historical thing. As you can see, I'm wearing this scarf on my head, but that is something that a lot of our ancestors did. Um, a lot of them wore head wraps. They wore even head wraps that matched their outfits. Like, for instance, if it was a place like, let's say Ghana, because I come from Ghana, they would wear if they're going to like a special occasion, like maybe a funeral or a naming ceremony or a birthday party, something like that festive. They would whatever cloth they're wearing, they would have it match. Their head wrap would match their hair. So it was all part of their beauty, but covering their hair was also part of a spiritual practice, which we'll get into a little bit more later. Um, what else did I have here? Um, Now, this was all before colonization and slavery. When our ancestors were untouched, this is how they kept their hair. When colonization came in, they were influenced and sometimes even, what's the word? I don't want to say ruled, but like they were made to style their hair differently, cover their hair, all of that stuff. And then colonization with white supremacy led us to having to straighten our hair and or feeling like we're more beautiful straightening our hair and all of that stuff. And in slavery, a lot of it is written historically that a lot of enslaved people had to cut their hair. Their hair was cut very short, or they had to keep it cut short because hair was not something that was embraced um, when during enslavement times. It wasn't something that the hair was always covered because they were always working. They're always under these conditions where their hair was not in adorned ways, and unless maybe they were working in the house with the slave masters. But most of the enslaved people that worked in the field had to keep their hair covered and short because it wasn't something that was supposed to be distracting or adorned in that way. Now, so that was the historical part. Energetic properties. The hair holds on to memories, it holds on to trauma, it holds on to energies, and more. It is like an antenna. It holds on to frequencies. It's literally because if you know anything about if you know anything about chakras, the crown chakra is literally like the first chakra. You know, it goes crown chakra, throat, and then it continues on into the last one, which is the root chakra. The crown chakra is on the top. So our hair is an extension of that, and it picks up frequencies and energies and all of that stuff in the air. It's an antenna. It can also be used to pick up energies, pick up energies, frequencies, trauma, memories, all that stuff, good or bad, which is why it's very important to, if you're in a place that has a lot of people's energies that you don't want to pick up on, to cover your hair. Um, whether it's covering your hair with a head wrap, with a hat, with a wig. Um, it's also sometimes it's if you're not able to cover your hair, having your hair in like a braided style or twist or cornrows or mini braids, stuff of that nature, um, to protect your energy because, like I said, it's an antenna and it picks up on energies, but not all of those energies are good. So you want to try to protect yourself from that. That is why, when I mentioned earlier that our ancestors, some of them, and I'm speaking from the perspective of somebody who's Ghanaian, so I know a little bit of the cultural aspect of that, um, going to a funeral and covering your hair. Funerals are a place where there are a lot of energies. First of all, it's a gathering, it's a place where a lot of people are there. So, a lot of people with different energies. On top of that, it's a funeral. So, you have the energy of the person who passed as well as their ancestors there, and you don't want to have your hair out picking up all that energy. So, it is, they used to and still do culturally cover their hair. And I say culturally because that's what we're supposed to do, but not everybody does that. Um, yes, and also very important to cover your hair because of going back to the crown chakra thing, because that is the first chakra in your body. Everything flows from the top to the bottom. It doesn't go it doesn't go bottom to top. So if I'm picking up frequencies in my first chakra, it's gonna move all the way down and enter my body. And you want to protect that. Also, your crown, you want to cover your crown because you know, our the way our body was constructed, our skull protects our brain, right? Our hair protects our skull and our scalp and our brain and all that stuff. So it's also a protective measure physically. There's a spiritual reason for that. You want to protect your energy, you want to protect your mind, your thoughts, all of that stuff, which is also a reason why it's important to cover your crown. Okay. So that's the energetic part. So I want to say I'm speaking from the perspective of women with natural hair. Because I'm a woman, I'm going to speak to women. But I would say if you're a man and you have long hair, because shorter hair doesn't really pick up on energies and frequencies like longer hair does. But if you're a man that has locks, has braids, has twists, all of those things, you do want to try and you are trying to work on your spiritual health. You do want to prioritize covering your crown, not letting anybody do your hair, and all of that stuff. So I'm going to move on to the importance of natural hair. Now that we've level set with knowing our history and we know the spiritual part, let's go into a little bit of the importance of natural hair. So, as I mentioned earlier, the energetic properties of our hair is still relevant. Historically and culturally, things have changed because of colonization and enslavement, like I mentioned. Um, Even in Africa, like I mentioned earlier, I am Ghanaian, so I'm speaking from that perspective. Even in Africa, in Ghana specifically, let me not generalize in that by saying Africa. In Ghana, it is very rare to see natural hair being embraced because of colonization. In most of the schools in Ghana, and correct me if I'm wrong. Most of the schools in Ghana, the um, young girls in the school are required to keep their hair short. Their hair will be natural, but it has to be cut very short, almost like a boy. So the men and the women have very short hair. They're required to do that from the time they start school, whether it's kindergarten, first grade, whatever, all the way into high school because hair is seen as a distraction. Now, there has been some historical, and all this stuff I'm mentioning, you guys can Google it. I advocate for people to do their own research, and to not just take my word for it. I did my research, this is why I'm presenting it to you guys. Now, they say it's said that the reason why they were required to keep their hair short is actually from colonization and slavery because when the colonizers came to Ghana and they began to have children with, the natives of the land, whether it was consensual or not. These children looked different, and they wanted to have a way to differentiate them from the natives of the land. So it was brought and suggested that they keep the natives of the land's hair short, while the other ones, the children of the colonizers and the natives were allowed to keep their hair long, and that's how they differentiated that. Um, so that's where they say that comes from. Now, the problem is when a child is taught from age, let's say age 5 to 18, that they must keep their hair short and that it is a distraction, they never learn how to take care of their hair. So now their hair becomes like a burden and an afterthought. So they grow up and end up not having to, they grow up and find it more convenient to perm or relax their hair if they want to keep their hair out, or they end up wearing wigs and weaves with straight textures because it was conditioned to them that their natural hair is not a priority. That's one too. Like I said earlier, they just don't know how to take care of their hair. And there's not many places and ways to learn how to take care of their hair. Now that is changing a lot because of the natural hair movement. Um, I was a part of the class of 2016 Natural Hair University, who learned a lot about natural hair during the natural hair movement that started around that time. I want to say 2014 to 2016. The natural hair movement was very prevalent, and a lot of us either went back natural or went natural, transitioned into natural hair, and all of that stuff. And it was very popular. So now there's a lot more information for people to learn how to take care of their hair no matter where they are. Now, it's not just a political statement, it's us taking our power back because we deserve to feel beautiful in the skin and the hair that we're in. It was conditioned to us that our hair is not beautiful, that our hair is not enough, our hair is not good the way that it is, which is why a lot of us, whether our parents permed our hair or we chose to perm our hair, is why our hair was relaxed. Now, remaining and maintaining the integrity of our natural hair in its natural state, the way it grows from our scalp, is how we keep its power. Relaxing the hair not only alters the state of the hair on a physical level, but on a spiritual level as well. Because our hair is no longer the way our hair is another which I forgot to mention this earlier. Another reason why our hair, black women, our hair or people of color, our hair is curly or coily or kinky instead of straight is because it protects our scalp from the sun. So somebody who lives in a colder climate does not need that much protection from the sun, so their hair grows straight and close to their scalp. Now, our hair grows out and towards the sun and defies gravity, as people like to say, because it's protecting our scalp from the rays of the sun. So the more dense and thick that texture of hair is, the more it's going to protect the hair from the sun. And I don't know how far this is true. I personally have a theory that the closer a person's ancestors live to the sun, the more coily their hair is. So like the closest to the equator, I should say. So like in a place like Ghana where the equator goes right through it, our hair is usually more on the like 4C, kinkier, coilier spectrum because we're so close to the sun and it's in such a hot climate. Um, there was something else I wanted to say about that, but I can't remember right now. Hopefully it'll come back to me and then I'll tell y'all. So yes, relaxers not only damage the physical property, but it damages the property of the hair as a whole. That is why when somebody relaxes their hair and wants to now become natural, they have to cut their hair off. You can't revert it because it's physically and chemically altered, and that messes up the energetic properties of the hair. It's not able to pick up the frequencies like it's supposed to. It's not able to pick up energies and protect us the way that it's supposed to because it has been physically and chemically altered. Um, so that's that on that. Um, because it has been altered, it prevents us from being able to receive the signals that we are meant to receive because our hair is an antenna. Our hair is an antenna that, like I mentioned earlier, that picks up frequencies, energies, messages, all of that stuff, which is why it's important to maintain the natural integrity of our hair and to also take care of our hair. There has been a lot of discourse. There's always discourse on TikTok, but a lot of people talk about how they wash their hair once a month, they wash their hair every 3 months, all this stuff, crazy stuff. Especially people who do protective styles and wear wigs and stuff like that. They don't wash their hair underneath the wig. That is very dangerous on an energetic level because every time we wash our hair, we are clearing our crown chakra, which allows us to think better, to pick up energies better, to pick up frequencies, to pick up messages. Because like I mentioned earlier, our hair does not only pick up all of those things, frequencies, energies, and all that stuff. It picks up messages from the universe because it's an antenna, right? If like those old school cars that used to have physical antennas on them instead of them being, I think now they're built into the car. The radio won't work if the antenna is broken. It can't receive the messages from the satellite that's transmitting that message or that radio station. If the antenna is broken, it can't receive it. It's the same thing with natural hair. If our natural hair antenna is broken or altered, or malfunctioning, we can't receive those messages from the universe. So back to what I was saying about clearing the crown chakra. People who don't wash their hair at least on a weekly basis. Crown chakra is all backed up, as I mentioned earlier. That is the first chakra of our body. So all of that is flowing through, and everything is just like congested. Um, it's important to take care of our hair on a physical level because it brings spiritual benefits that I mentioned earlier. It's important to maintain the health of our hair. It's important to wash our hair on a weekly basis at the very least, depending on your lifestyle. Some people might have to wash a little bit more often um, to keep the crown chakra clear so that we're able to not only rinse away any energies that we no longer need, but it resets our whole entire routine. Every time I wash my hair, I feel like I can think better. And I wash my hair on a weekly basis. Every time I wash my hair, I feel like I can think better. I can think more clearly. I can, everything is clear and ready to receive, you know? Um, so here are my little calls to action or my takeaways, I should say. Prioritize cleansing the hair at least once a week. If you're not natural, please consider going natural. And especially if you're on a spiritual journey, consider embracing the natural texture of your hair. Um, Cover the hair when needed. If you're in a place with a lot of people, cover your hair, whether it's with a scarf, a head wrap, a baseball hat, anything. If you can't cover your hair, like I mentioned earlier, braids, twists, uh, cornrows. If you're not able to do those, put your hair in a ponytail. Put your hair in a ponytail. That will protect your energy as well. I do that all the time. If I'm in a place where I'm with around a lot of people, I will quickly put my hair in a ponytail to protect my energy. Um, what else? And tying back into what we mentioned earlier about the hairstylist, test the spirit of people who will do your hair. How do we do that? Discernment. Now, working on your discernment is something that I might talk about later down the road, but working on your discernment and being able to discern the spirit of whoever is going to do your hair is very important. For me, one of the things that I do, if somebody has like an attitude about doing my hair, you're not gonna have that energy around my hair. You're not gonna have that energy around my head. I have thick, dense 4C hair, and sometimes that can be overwhelming for people, and they'll say things like, "Oh my God, you have so much hair." Da, da, da. I don't let people like that do my hair. I'll just be like, you know what, it's good. Um, but if let's say you're on a place like Instagram or whatever looking for somebody to do your hair, you want to discern the spirit of the person to see if this person is fit to do your hair because it's not everybody that should be touching your hair. That is another reason why um if you're on a spiritual journey, you must learn how to maintain your hair on like a weekly basis by yourself. It's important that you don't leave that work for somebody else. You want to be doing that by yourself to protect your energy. You know, you don't want to always have somebody's hands in your head. You also don't want to have multiple hands in your head. You should try to have at least one person who you go to get your hair done. I had to learn that the hard way. Now I have one person that does my hair for me because people's energies be messed up and they be trying to put that in our hair. Our hair literally holds on to stuff. I'm not gonna allow somebody with bad energy to put that bad energy in my hair and then it's no. Um Another thing is I have, and it'll be linked in the description of this video. If you need natural hair tips, you want some tips and tutorials, you want to learn how to take care of your natural hair, go to my website, manyehaircare.com. It's linked in the bio. It's also linked in my actual YouTube bio. So go there. We have a whole bunch of free resources on our Instagram, on our Pinterest, and on our actual website. So make sure you go there to read up and learn how to take better care of your hair. Our hair is very powerful and they knew that and they didn't want us to know that, and it's very important that we protect that power by protecting our hair and by protecting who we allow to touch our hair. Oh, I wanted to mention this earlier. Another thing about having multiple people touching our hair, I've heard from stylists that people who clients who go to a lot of different stylists, their hair is usually in bad shape. Now, that's on a physical level, right? On a spiritual level, it's probably because you have so many different energies con- contacting your hair, you know? In general, it's good practice as a spiritual person to not, whether it's hair, nails, lashes, makeup, to have one go to person that you trust because you want to protect yourself, you know? Um, so, yeah, let me just look at my notes one more time to make sure I didn't miss anything. But this was such an important topic that I wanted to talk about because I don't see a lot of people talking about it. How we have so much spiritual power in our hair. Um, yeah. And even speaking of embracing your natural hair, your natural self, it's an act of self-love, and loving on yourself is extremely spiritually important, because this is the body that whoever you believe in, God gave me. This is the body and the hair that God gave me. And who would I be to be ungrateful and not embrace what God has given me? You know? Um, yeah. So if you made it to the end, I want to say thank you so much. Let me know in the comments what you learned from this video. I am excited for you to rediscover your magic because our hair is magical. Our hair defies gravity. The others can't say that. Their hair grows straight down. Our hair goes up towards the sun because we are blessed. So make sure you like this video if you watch to the end and consider subscribing and joining our family. Um, and please share your own experiences with natural hair down in the comments. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day whenever you're watching this. Love y'all.